My silver eyes made me a monster in Havenwood, forcing me to hide beneath a hood, because one glimpse could turn a whispered fear into a furious hunt. The hood of my cloak was my shield, my sanctuary. It was woven from coarse brown wool, but to me it was the finest armor a girl could ask for. It hid the one thing that made me a monster in the eyes of everyone in Havenwood: my eyes. I learned early on to keep my head bowed, to study the cracks in the cobblestones, the scurrying of mice in the gutters, anything but the faces of the people I passed. Because if they saw my eyes, the whispers would start. And the whispers were always worse than silence. My parents said my eyes were the color of a winter storm, a swirling, luminous silver that caught the light in a way no normal eyes did. My mother would trace the lines of my face and tell me I was beautiful, a rare gift. But then she'd sigh. Her own warm, brown eyes filled with a sadness that crushed me, and she'd pull my hood up a little tighter. "Your eyes are a storm, my love," she'd murmur, "and some people are afraid of storms." In Havenwood it wasn't just some people, it was everyone. They called us, the few families who carried this trait, the silver-marked. An old, ugly legend said we were harbingers of ruin, that our gaze could curdle milk, blight crops, and invite misfortune. It was nonsense, of course, the kind of fearful tale told around a fire to scare children. But here, in this isolated valley where traditions clung like moss to stone, it was gospel. That morning the sickness had taken a firm hold of my mother. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and a feverish sweat slicked her brow. We were out of feverfew tea, and my father was miles away, trading lumber in the next town over, the only place that would still do business with a silver-marked man. The task fell to me. "Just to the apothecary and back, Elara," my mother had whispered, pressing a few precious coins into my hand. "Keep your head down. Be quick. No one will bother you." Her words were a prayer, not a promise. Every step I took from our small cottage on the edge of town felt like walking into a cage. The air in the market square was thick with the smell of baked bread and gossip. I could feel the stairs on my back, a physical weight. They didn't need to see my eyes to know who I was. The hunched posture, the deep hood, the path I took along the very edges of the street, I was as good as branded. I got the herbs from old Elspeth at the apothecary. She was one of the few who didn't seem to care. She was half-blind and mostly deaf, and she treated me with the same gruff indifference she showed everyone else. For that I was grateful. But my relief was short-lived. On the way back, a dizzying wave of hunger washed over me. I hadn't eaten since the night before, too worried about my mother to have an appetite. The scent from the bakery was intoxicating, a warm, yeasty cloud of pure temptation. I had 1 coin left, just enough for a small loaf. A moment of weakness, a simple human desire, was all it took to change everything. I pushed open the heavy wooden door, a little bell tinkling nervously above me. Mr. Abernathy, a man whose belly was as round and soft as his dough, stood behind the counter. He was smiling at a customer, but the moment his eyes landed on me, the smile vanished. It was like a shutter slamming shut. "What do you want?" he snapped, his voice hard and flat. I kept my gaze fixed on the floorboards, my voice barely a whisper. "A loaf of bread, please." I slid the coin onto the counter. He didn't touch it. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I could feel the eyes of the other customer, a woman I recognized from the village, boring into the side of my head. "We don't serve your kind here," Mr. Abernathy said, his voice low and venomous. "Take your cursed money and get out." Humiliation burned in my cheeks. My hand trembled as I reached to retrieve the coin, but as I did, my hood slipped. Just for a second, a single catastrophic second, it fell back, and the dim light of the bakery caught my eyes. I saw Mr. Abernathy flinch, physically recoiling as if I'd struck him. The woman behind me gasped. "Silver curse," he spat, the word hitting me like a stone. He swiped a flour-dusted hand across the counter, knocking my coin to the floor. It rolled into a dark corner with a pathetic clatter. Tears pricked at my eyes, hot and shameful. I scrambled on the floor, my fingers searching for the lost coin in the dust and grime. He kicked at my hand. Not hard, but it was the intent, the disgust, that made me cry out. Get out of my shop, you omen of bad luck! Go on, get!" I fled, clutching the bag of herbs for my mother, the precious loaf of bread forgotten. But the whispers followed me out the door. Did you see her eyes? The baker was right to throw her out. The silver curse, in broad daylight. The words grew louder, bolder, feeding on each other. A small boy, no older than 7, picked up a pebble and threw it. It struck my shoulder with a sharp sting. Then another. Fear, cold and absolute, seized me. This wasn't just whispers anymore. The mob was waking up. I started to run. My worn leather boots slipped on the slick stones as I sprinted through the market, knocking over a crate of apples. The sound of angry shouts erupted behind me, mixing with the thunder of my own heart. I glanced back and my blood ran cold. It wasn't just a few people anymore. A crowd was gathering, their faces twisted into masks of fear and hatred. Mr. Abernathy was at the front, his face purple with rage. They were chasing me. I was the fox, and the whole town had become the hounds. I ducked into a narrow alleyway, hoping to lose them. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. It was a dead end. A high stone wall, slick with moss, blocked my way. I was trapped. I turned, pressing my back against the cold, damp stone, and faced them. The crowd spilled into the alley's entrance, blocking the only way out, their forms silhouetted against the bright, uncaring sky. Their faces were a blur of anger, their voices a terrifying roar. There was nowhere left to run. My shield was gone, my hood had fallen completely back, and my silver eyes, wide with terror, met theirs. A hand reached out to grab me. My breath hitched in a sob, and every ounce of air in my body erupted in a single, desperate plea. "Help!" The cry ripped from my throat, raw and thin against the growing snarl of the crowd. The hand lunging for me belonged to a farmer whose name I didn't know, his knuckles thick with dirt, his face a mask of righteous fury. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact, for the pain, for the tearing of my cloak, and the shouts of victory from the mob who had finally cornered their monster. But the blow never landed. Instead, a new voice cut through the clamor, sharp and clear as breaking glass. "That's enough." It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that silenced the alley instantly. The farmer's hand froze inches from my face. I dared to open my eyes. A man stood at the entrance to the alley, blocking the path of the mob. He was tall, dressed in dark, travel-worn leathers, and a heavy gray cloak was slung over his shoulders. He wasn't from Havenwood. I had never seen him before. His face was stern, etched with lines that spoke of long roads and hard suns, and a faint pale scar cut through one of his eyebrows. He didn't look at the crowd. His gaze was fixed on me, and for the first time in my life I saw someone look at my eyes without flinching. There was no fear, no disgust, only a calm, unnerving assessment. Mr. Abernathy, puffed up with the courage of the mob at his back, took a step forward. "This is town business, stranger. It doesn't concern you. This girl is a curse." The stranger's gaze finally shifted from me to the baker. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "She's a child, and you're a mob of fools chasing her down a dark alley. As of right now, it concerns me very much." "She's silver-marked," someone shrieked from the back. "Her kind brings ruin." The stranger gave a short, humorless laugh. "Ruin? I see a baker, a blacksmith, a handful of farmers, all leaving their work in the middle of the day to terrorize a girl. If your crops fail this season, I'd blame your priorities, not the color of her eyes." His words were like sparks on dry tinder. A low growl rumbled through the crowd. The farmer who had first reached for me took his chance. He lunged again, not at me this time, but at the stranger, trying to shove him aside. The stranger moved with a speed that was almost unreal. He sidestepped the clumsy attack, his hand shooting out to grip the farmer's wrist. He twisted. It wasn't violent, but it was precise and final. The farmer cried out, his knees buckling as he was forced to the ground. The stranger released him with a dismissive shove. "I will not say it again," the stranger said, his voice now laced with a cold danger that froze the blood in my veins. "Leave. Now." For a heart-stopping moment, no one moved. The air crackled with indecision. They looked from the stranger, who stood like a stone wall, to the whimpering farmer on the ground, and their collective anger began to curdle into uncertainty and fear. He was one man, but he was more terrifying than their superstitions. Mr. Abernathy was the first to back away, his face pale and doughy. Then another followed, and another, until the mouth of the alley was empty. They melted back into the market square, their hateful shouts reduced to frightened muttering. The stranger stood there for a long moment, watching them go, ensuring they were truly gone. Then he turned back to me. I was still pressed against the wall, trembling so hard my teeth chattered. He took a step towards me, and instinct took over. I bolted. I scrambled past him, out of the alley, and into the now empty street. I couldn't go home. They knew where I lived. They would go there, and my sick mother. I couldn't bear the thought. There was only one place to go. The Whisperwood, the forest that bordered the town, a place of tangled roots and deep shadows, a place children were warned never to enter alone. But it felt safer than the town. I ran, ignoring the stitch in my side and the burning in my lungs. I plunged into the tree line, the cool, damp air of the forest enveloping me like a shroud. I didn't stop until the sounds of Havenwood were completely gone, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the frantic pounding of my own heart. I finally collapsed at the base of an ancient oak, gasping for breath, my body shaking with leftover adrenaline and terror. I was alone. I was lost. But I was away from them. A twig snapped behind me. I shot to my feet, my heart leaping into my throat. The stranger stood there, not 10 paces away. He had followed me. He moved with a quiet grace that was impossible for a man his size, his footsteps making almost no sound on the forest floor. The fear I'd felt in the alley came rushing back, but this time it was different. It was sharper, more focused. I was no longer facing a faceless mob, but a single unknown man who had just shown me how dangerous he could be. He held up his hands, palms open, a gesture of peace that did little to calm me. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice low and steady. He took another slow step forward, and his eyes, a deep, piercing blue, met mine again. He wasn't looking at me with pity or curiosity. It was something else, something I couldn't name. It was recognition. "They're gone," he said. "You're safe for now." He paused, his gaze intense, as if he were looking past my face and into my very soul. "The stories I heard didn't do them justice," he murmured, almost to himself. Then his eyes locked onto mine, and he asked a question that shattered my entire world. "Now tell me, where are the others?" "The others?" The words stumbled out of me, a panicked whisper. My mind raced. Did he mean the Websters, the family of weavers who lived by the river? Or the old Cormac brothers who kept to themselves in the northern hills? We were the only silver-marked families left in Havenwood. Did this stranger want to hunt us all down? I took a half-step back, my hand instinctively reaching for a rock, a branch, anything to defend myself. "Who are you? What do you want with them?" He saw the fear in my eyes, the defensive posture, and he held up his hands again, slowly. "My name is Kalen, and I want the same thing for them that I want for you, to see you safe." "Safe?" I let out a choked, bitter laugh. "I haven't been safe a single day of my life. You saw them. They hate us." "They don't hate you," he said, his voice quiet but intense. "They fear you. And frightened people do hateful things. They've been fed lies for generations, Alara. Poisonous old stories about a curse that doesn't exist. He knew my name. My mother must have called it out when I left the cottage. He must have been nearby, watching. The thought sent a fresh chill down my spine. How long had he been there? Why? "How do you know my name?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Why were you there?" "I was passing through. I heard the commotion, and when I saw them chasing you—" He trailed off, and his expression shifted. The stern lines around his mouth softened into something I couldn't decipher. Regret? Sympathy? He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself. "I know what it's like, because I've been running from mobs like that my whole life." And then he did something that stopped the frantic beat of my heart. He reached up and pushed the deep hood of his own cloak back. His hair was dark, flecked with gray at the temples, but that wasn't what I saw. What I saw were his eyes. They were the color of a winter storm, a swirling luminous silver that caught the dappled forest light. His eyes were just like mine. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Every lesson I'd ever been taught, every whispered insult, every moment of shame and fear, suddenly felt like a lie. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't an omen. I wasn't alone. The words were a key turning in a lock I didn't even know existed inside me. Tears I hadn't let fall in the alley now streamed down my cheeks, hot and silent. "You're—" I whispered, unable to finish the sentence. "Like you," he finished for me, his voice gentle. "We are not silver-marked, Elara. That's their name for us. A brand. We are the Lumaris, and there are more of us than you can imagine. Not many, and we are scattered to the winds, but we are not gone." He took a careful step closer. "I search for the lost ones, for families like yours, trapped in ignorant little towns like this one, living in the shadow of a lie. I came here following rumors of a cursed family. I came here to find you. The Lumaris." The name felt strange and beautiful on my tongue. For a moment, a dizzying, breathtaking moment, I felt a flicker of hope so bright it hurt. A whole world of people like me. A place where I wouldn't have to hide. But the hope was extinguished as quickly as it came, smothered by a cold, hard reality. "My mother," I said, the word a gasp. "She's sick. The herbs. I dropped them." I looked down at my hands, empty save for the dirt and scratches from my fall. I had failed. My one simple task, and I had failed. My mother was at home, burning with fever, and I was here in the woods with a silver-eyed stranger while a mob wanted me gone. Kalen's face grew grim. "We need to go back for her." "Go back?" Panic seized me. "We can't. They'll be looking for me. They'll go to my house." "Exactly," he said, his blue-silver eyes sharp and focused. "Fear, once stirred, doesn't settle easily. When they couldn't find you in the streets, they would have gone to the one place they knew to find you. Your home." His words hit me with the force of a physical blow. He was right. Mr. Abernathy, the farmer, all of them. Their rage wouldn't have just evaporated, it would have festered, and it would have found a new target. My mother, alone, sick, and defenseless. The terror that gripped me was a different kind now. It wasn't for myself. It was a ferocious, primal fear for my family. "We have to go. Now," I said, my voice shaking but firm. Kalen nodded once. "Stay close to me. Keep to the shadows. We'll go around the edge of the woods. It's longer, but we'll see the cottage before they see us." We moved through the undergrowth, a silent, desperate pair. Kalen was a shadow, his steps sure and quiet, while I stumbled behind him, my mind a chaotic storm of fear and newfound revelation. The Lumaris, a people, a name. It was a fragile seed of a new identity, but it was being choked by the thorny vines of my immediate terror. Every rustle of leaves sounded like an approaching villager. Every shadow held the shape of a man with a club. Finally, we reached the ridge that overlooked our small plot of land. My cottage was nestled there, a plume of smoke curling faintly from the chimney. For a second, relief washed over me. It was still standing. They hadn't burned it, but the relief was instantly shattered. The plume of smoke wasn't the only light. Flickering, angry orange torches dotted the landscape around my home, casting long, dancing shadows that writhed like snakes. The mob hadn't dispersed. They had reformed. They were there, a ring of hatred around my home, their voices a low, menacing murmur that drifted up through the trees. And at their head, holding a torch high, was Mr. Abernathy, his face a grotesque mask of fury in the firelight. Through the trees I saw my home. It wasn't a sanctuary. It was a siege. My breath caught in my throat, a ragged, silent scream. They had my mother trapped. My father wasn't due back for 2 more days. She was in there, sick and alone, surrounded by a pack of wolves who thought she was the source of all their misfortune. I made a move to run, to scramble down the ridge and throw myself between them and my home, a foolish, desperate impulse. Kalen's hand shot out, grabbing my arm. His grip was like iron. "No," he said, his voice a low command. "Running down there is suicide, for both of you." "But my mother!" I cried, twisting in his grasp. The flickering torchlight glinted off the tears on my face. "We have to do something." "We will," he assured me, his silver eyes never leaving the scene below. "But not with brute force. Look at them. They're not a mob anymore. They're a jury." His gaze was calculating, taking in every detail. "They're waiting for something. Or someone." He was right. They weren't storming the door. They were standing there, their torches held high, a grim, silent vigil. It was Mr. Abernathy who was doing all the talking, his voice a low drone that I couldn't quite make out, but the angry gestures he made toward my cottage were clear enough. He was stoking their fear, feeding the flames. "There's a root cellar," I whispered, my mind latching onto a sliver of hope. "The door is behind the cottage, hidden by the woodpile. We can get in that way." Kalen looked at me, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Good. What's the layout of the house?" I quickly described it. The main room with the hearth where my mother would be, the small adjoining bedroom. It was a simple, desperate plan. We would sneak in through the cellar, get my mother, and slip back out into the woods before anyone knew we were there. "It's risky," Kalen said, his voice grim. "If they see us, they'll be on us in a second. We'll have to be faster than shadows." We crept down the ridge, using the cover of the gnarled trees and deep twilight. Every snapped twig underfoot sounded like a gunshot to my ears. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. We reached the woodpile behind my cottage. The angry murmur of the crowd was louder here, just on the other side of the thin wooden walls. I could hear Abernathy's voice clearly now. "The blight on the eastern fields started the day her child was born. It's a sign. We have to cleanse this town of their curse." Bile rose in my throat. I pushed against the heavy logs of the woodpile, my muscles screaming with the effort. Kalen added his strength, and together we shifted them just enough to reveal the low, moss-covered cellar door. I pulled the iron ring, and the door lifted with a low groan that made me flinch. We slipped into the cool, earthy darkness of the cellar and gently closed the door behind us. The air was thick with the smell of damp soil and stored potatoes. I led Kalen by the hand to the ladder that led up to a trapdoor in the kitchen floor. As I pushed it open a crack, the warm air from the main room washed over us, thick with the scent of wood smoke and sickness. I could hear my mother's ragged coughing. I pushed the door open the rest of the way and scrambled into the room. She was lying on her cot by the hearth, her face pale and slick with sweat. Her eyes, the same warm brown as I remembered, fluttered open. They widened first in relief when she saw me, then in absolute terror when she saw Kalen emerge from the floor behind me, a tall, silver-eyed stranger. "Ilara, who?" she gasped, trying to sit up. "It's all right, Mother," I said, rushing to her side. "He's a friend. He's like us." I pushed back Kalen's hood. My mother's gasp was audible. For a moment she just stared, her expression a mixture of shock and a dawning, wondrous disbelief. A lifetime of isolation, and here was proof that we were not alone. "We have to go," Kalen said urgently, his voice low. "Now." He knelt and with surprising gentleness gathered my frail mother into his arms. She was so light. As he stood, a crash from the front of the house made us all freeze. The front door shuddered under a heavy blow. "They're coming in," I whispered, my blood turning to ice. "The window," Kalen grunted, already moving toward the small bedroom. "It's our only chance." He shouldered his way into the tiny room just as another splintering crash echoed from the front. He laid my mother on the bed and turned to the window, a small square of glass and wood that looked out into the woods. He smashed the pane with his elbow, the sound of shattering glass lost in the roar from the front room as the door finally gave way. He helped my mother through the broken window first, her feet finding the soft earth outside. Then he turned to me. "Go, I'll be right behind you." I scrambled through, cutting my arm on a shard of glass, but I barely felt it. I helped my mother to her feet, and we plunged into the darkness of the Whisperwood. Behind us I heard the triumphant shouts of the mob as they poured into our empty home, followed by a roar of pure rage as they realized we were gone. Then I heard Kalen's voice, a powerful shout from just outside the window. "Over here, you fools!" He wasn't following us. He was drawing them away. He was giving us a chance to escape. I wanted to scream, to go back for him, but my mother's weak hand clutched mine. "We have to trust him, Ilara. Go! And so we ran. We ran until our lungs burned and my mother could go no further. We collapsed in a hidden dell, miles from Havenwood, and huddled together for warmth as the moon rose high in the sky. I didn't know if Callan was alive or dead. I only knew that he had bought us our freedom with his courage. We waited there for what felt like an eternity. Just as the first pale light of dawn began to streak the sky, a figure emerged from the trees. It was Callan. He was bruised, his cloak was torn, and there was a bloody gash on his forehead. But he was alive, and he was smiling. "They won't be following," he said, his voice weary but triumphant. "A few tricks and a lot of running in circles. They'll be chasing shadows for a week." Tears of relief streamed down my face. I ran to him, throwing my arms around him in a hug that he awkwardly returned. "You came back." "I told you," he said, his hand resting on my head. "I came to find you." He led us away from Havenwood to a path I never knew existed. He spoke of a hidden community, a sanctuary for the Lumaris, a place where silver eyes were not a curse but a heritage. My father found us on the road a day later, Callan having left a subtle sign for him on the path. His reunion with my mother was a tearful, joyous thing to behold. For the first time my family was not just fleeing from something, but running towards something. We were not monsters in a village that hated us. We were the Lumaris, and we were finally going home. The hood of my cloak still felt like a comfort, but it was no longer a shield. It was just a piece of cloth. I pushed it back, letting the morning sun catch my eyes, and I wasn't afraid of the light.